Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 46th Annual Mill Valley Film Festival. It's amazing, isn't it? We've been doing it for 46 years now. Yeah. Well, my name is Kelly Clement, and I'm the Director of Documentary Programming. I've been doing it for the last 20 years. And I know most of you. I've seen most of you in the theaters, so this is like a family gathering. And I want you to know that this has been the best years of my life working for this world-renowned festival that's respected all over the world, and filmmakers want to bring their films to this festival. And it's amazing that what we've gone through over the last 2 years during the COVID period. And today, like many arts organizations across the country, here at California Film Institute, we're going through unprecedented challenges. And there's never been a tougher time, but we are seeing our attendance rising, but still not to the degree that we need to keep going as a cultural arts organization. And that's why we've created the CAFILM Resiliency Fund. And our goal is to reach $500,000 in additional support by the end of the year. And that's why we have a QR code up there, and we'd love it if you could take a picture of it and enter the site and help us put this organization back together again. And a generous donor has stepped up with a $100,000 matching gift fund for the opening of the festival. So this means that every dollar that you donate will be doubled. And so please donate, if possible, any amount. We'd be very appreciated and be able to keep us working to build an even brighter future for cinema in Marin County. But today, you're going to see an amazing film, and it's one that just took me by surprise when it came across my viewing desk. And I knew that this was just one that had to be in the Mill Valley Film Festival. And we're very excited to be hosting the world premiere of A Double Life, Catherine Masud's dramatic true life film. And this is about a local individual that many of you perhaps already know. And I'd like to bring up Catherine to say a few words before the screening. It's a long walk, isn't it?
Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here. And first of all, I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to the Mill Valley Film Festival for having us here for the premiere of A Double Life. And it's also wonderful to see such a full house today for our first screening at the festival. So I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for your interest in and support of A Double Life, which has been a labor of love many years in the making. I don't really want to take up any more of the time before the screening, but just to ask you to please stick around after the film is over, because we'll be having a meaningful discussion, we hope, with members of the cast. It's a documentary, of course. Myself, and also our wonderful producer, Abby Ginzberg. So please stick around, and we'll see you then. Enjoy the film. Thank you.
Enjoy the film. And don't forget to ballot, don't forget to vote at the end.
Hello, Tess.
Thanks. Oh, I think we should start, Catherine. I think we're going to start with a couple of thank yous because there's some people in the room who... Can you hear us? Okay, so we're going to start with a couple of thank yous. Catherine and I need to kick this off by acknowledging some of the people who helped us bring this film to you. So, Catherine, take it away.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, everyone. It's really such, it's just so moving to be here with all of you. We wanted to give shout outs to the people who were on our team in the making of the film. So I wanted to ask them to stand as I call out their names, and then when I finish, then we can give them all a big round of applause. So first of all, I would like to ask our editor, Ken Schneider, to please stand. And our other editor, Louise Rubaki, to please stand. And also our cinematographer, Vicente Franco. And also cinematographer, Michael Santi. Our music composer, John Lissauer. Our graphics and animation artist, Siane Montas de Oca. Our sound mixer, Isaac Olsen of Immersive Sound. Our colorist, Ibon Olascoaga. I hope I got that right. Okay. Unfortunately, our dear consulting editor, Cinque Northern, couldn't be with us today because of a family emergency, but we also acknowledge his contribution. So again, a big round of applause for all of you for your contribution.
Can you hear me? It's my job to thank our major funders. So first and foremost, we need to thank the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation and Jonathan Logan, our executive producer. They came in early and generously, and this film would not be finished today if they had not stayed with us. Nancy Blackman, our associate producer. Denise Abrams and David Harrington. David McLean and Marilyn Wong, both of whom responded to an emergency request from me and came through. We also were supported by Marcy Rubin, Hannah Kranzberg, Sarah Campos, Allison Lingo, and probably everybody else in this room has made a donation one time or another to this film, for which we are extremely grateful. So thank you all. And one last thing, would the people who were the interviewees in the film either stand or raise your hand so we can see who you are, because a lot of you are here today. Okay, Doran and Henry, thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay.
I also just wanted to remember 3 of the interviewers in the film who are not with us because they're no longer here on this earth. Karen Jo Kunin, Peter Haberfeld, and Patrick Barthélemy. Let's remember them.
So, Catherine, why don't you introduce the rest of the people on the stage?
Well, I think Steve needs no introduction, but this is Stephen Bingham, alias Robert Bortz. And of course, our producer, Abby Ginzberg, you all know her. And Paul Harris, who's also very much there in the film and was part of the legal defense team of Steve's during the trial.
Yeah, I would just like to take the moment also to ask Françoise to stand. She stood by me.
Wonderful. Well, the first question I always ask in these Q&As is, how did this all get started? Where did you connect with Stephen and decide to make a movie out of this?
Well, as you saw in the film, he was always my favorite uncle. But it was a story that I grew up with. My brother and I grew up with. Others in the family also of my generation grew up with. It sort of hung over us like a shadow, and we never really understood it. I was only 8 years old at the time. And we were just told simply never to talk about Steve, certainly not on the telephone, right? Never to mention his name. So it was something, of course, I was naturally curious about. I really wanted to understand what had happened, where he'd gone, what had happened during the time that he was away. I mean, for many years we thought he was dead. So later on, when I became something of a storyteller, I thought, well, this is a story that I'd really like to tell. But it wasn't until many, many years later that I even got up the courage to ask Steve if I could make this film about him. But it was a journey for me to answer those questions that I'd had when I was a very small child, wondering why Steve had suddenly disappeared.
And what was your reaction, Steve?
Well, I don't know if anyone in the room has ever had a film made about them, but I'm so happy it happened, but it sort of blew me away. What many of you in the room may not know is that Catherine has been a distinguished filmmaker for decades and lived much of her film career in Bangladesh. And through a tragedy similar to our own, she lost her husband and 4 other members of their film team in a horrific crash in a monsoon in Bangladesh. And because they were such a team, making films together, it really wasn't possible to continue living in Bangladesh and trying to continue the work. So she came back to the States as a distinguished filmmaker, but who'd never made a film in the United States. And eventually that's where Abby just helped enormously, because many of you have seen many of Abby's films. She told me there were 3 or 4 of her films that have been at this festival. So she's anyway, she's been around a while, and she just is incredibly productive. And the combination of the 2 of them working together is what made this all possible. And I'm just grateful not only to Catherine, dear niece, but to Abby for providing, it's like 2 people who have different complementary things to put into a project, and they synchronize that, and we're in sync with each other. So it was
I just want to say, I didn't know Catherine. Steve introduced me and said, I don't know if there's a role for you here, but you 2 need to meet and see if there is. And when Catherine had already done literally all the interviews. And when she told me who she had interviewed, I was like, yeah, I think I can help you. These are some of my longest and best friends throughout I started as a lawyer, so everybody that I've known throughout my entire career is up on that screen. And, I have a tremendous amount of respect for and loyalty to them. So helping bring this story to the screen was really important. And just my own involvement in this was that I did not know Steve before he left. I met him the day he came back, at Glide Church. I was there, but I had not known him before. So this was a story that I certainly had followed the story of his trial. I went to college with Susan Rutberg, so I know what she was going through throughout the history of the trial. Paul was my mentor as a young lawyer. So anyway, I was intimately connected to all these people, but knew nothing about how this film was going to come together. So somehow over the past few years, we made it happen. And again, thanks to our funders.
What was it like for you, Stephen, to see your life up there on the screen?
Well, it's funny. I've now seen pretty much finished copies of the film about 4 or 5 times, and
It changes each time.
well, it's changed some, but I have to say I cry each time. I can't help it. There's so much, as I said in the film, that life throws shit at you, and it's certainly happened to us. And I sort of hope, as Susan Rutberg says at one point in the film, at the acquittal time, that something to the effect that it sends a message that we can do these things, and we have to keep doing these things, and we can't allow ourselves to be beaten back. And I've tried to do that, and this is...
No, I was going to say, are you going to ask Paul a question? Because I'll hand him the mic.
And how did you feel about seeing yourself up on the screen? You were up there very often.
I brought my family. They loved it. Steve and I were classmates. We dropped out of Berkeley Law School, and then we went back together. And we were supposed to be doing a case together, a police riot case in the Mission, because Steve wanted a little bit of criminal law experience. So that was Monday morning, and I opened the Sunday paper, and I saw him on the cover, and he's gone. And I thought, damn, who's going to do the trial with me?
That's great.
Let me just share one thing from the preliminary hearing. I had this epiphany. I was sitting there with the 3 defense lawyers and Steve and the police investigator and the district attorney, and I thought, wow, of these 6 people, Steve is the most nonviolent.
Well, Catherine, you assembled some amazing footage. Where did you find all that archival footage, and how much research did it take?
I mean, when you do a film like this, where you need to have a lot of archival, not just footage, but photographs and newspaper articles, it's a very, very complex and long process. And, you know, as the story continues to evolve, then you realize you need something else, and then you need something more. And so even up to the last minute, you know, we were kind of grappling with the archival, and I must say that it was a huge part of the cost of the film, the archival licensing fees that one needs for a film of this sort.
And as your producer, can I just say something? I'd like to tell you we are still carrying close to a $20,000 debt. So I'm going to urge you all to take one of the postcards when you walk out of here. And it's literally, if everybody gave us $50, we could pay it off. So just think about this. You know, we always say, and it's true, it takes a village to make a movie. It now takes a village to pay your archival debt as well. So think about helping us, because that's a big burden to have as you're trying to launch a film into the rest of the world. And I'd like to say just one other thing about the archival. You get a choice between the train footage you saw as Henry is going into Toronto, or some other really crappy train footage. And each time you say, no, we need the really good train footage, it's like another $2,000. So we did not skimp, but now we are facing the consequences of not skimping. So if you liked the archival, that's what we're carrying our debt for. So just saying this is, and it's gotten worse. Let me just say one other thing as someone who's made a lot of these archival films. We probably estimated the archival of this when we started as being about $50,000, and the real bill is closer to $90,000. So just saying that, you know, CBS and CNN and everybody else has figured out how to charge independent filmmakers fees that they cannot afford.
Yes, and it's concentrating. The ownership of archival rights are being more and more concentrating. So Getty has gobbled up NBC, for example, and the rates just, you know, skyrocketed.
So
NBC was always a great place for independent filmmakers to go for reasonably priced archival So, but in answer to your question, I mean, we got it from all over the place. We got it from, local news affiliates. We got it from national news affiliates. We got it from international sources as well. And then, of course, there were family sources also, which thankfully didn't cost money.
The backstory of that, which is pretty astonishing, is that the two of them worked on this film without drawing any salary. So that's the world of documentary
why it's so
filmmaking.
independent. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God I have a job.
Well, how many years have you been working on this?
Oh, it's almost embarrassing to admit, but I guess I started in 2016. That was when I did the first part of the shooting in France. And then I continued to shoot in 2017 and 2018, even 2019 I did some shooting. But then, of course, COVID hit, right? And so everything kind of came to a standstill as far as that was concerned. But by that time, it was mostly done. We had a little bit of pickup shooting after that, but really, the editing had already started. That took place over a number of years, and really grappled with the story a lot. It's hard to appreciate that when you see a finished film on the screen, but there were so many iterations of the story as we moved along. Documentaries, just in general, they tend to take time, and some more than others.
You should add to that she's a single mom, and that takes a lot of time, as you moms know. And also, she started to build a new career in the midst of all of this. She's now an adjunct professor.
No, I'm not an adjunct.
She's a real professor.
Oh, you're a real professor. Well, far out. My wife, Francoise, is still only an adjunct at College of Marin. They don't allow anybody to become a professor out there. But she also started this career at the University of Connecticut. And so she's doing all of this while she's making a film. So it's the life of documentary filmmakers. I know myself, I keep forgetting now, but I'm a documentary filmmaker.
Yes, you are.
And
How long did it take you to finish your film?
about 3 years. I didn't have a whole lot of other things I was working on at the time. But I must say the experience of making films in France, it's, I don't know if you get a sense of it from the film, but when you're making films, you're really putting yourself out there in public. And everything inside of me was saying, don't put yourself out there in public, because that's not the smartest thing to do, and yet you can't do good political work unless you do that. So I was just willing to take that risk to do it. And but ultimately, I guess I'm a poor people's lawyer at heart. I was not tempted to continue to be a filmmaker when I got back to this country.
Our loss. And I was wondering, that first time you came over to meet your parents, did you have any hesitation about coming over and exposing yourself? And then did you have any idea about maybe staying at that time?
Well, the second question first, I didn't have any idea of staying. I was living in France by 1974, so it was a quick trip over and back. But as to the first question, it was sort of like a military operation to arrange to see them. Many of my friends didn't want it to happen at all. Catherine captured a little bit that my dad was a loose cannon during all of this. Understandably, He's my father, was my father, but we were so careful. I was coming out by train from New York City, not even going into Connecticut, and this sort of arrangement for them to come across by the ferry made it sort of more unlikely that anybody be able to put two and two together. And having Gary go to the house and force them to leave immediately without them even able to use the telephone to tell anybody they were going away. All of that were things that we had decided ahead of time to make sure it was safe. So I actually felt pretty safe. And to the extent that I didn't, as I think the film captures, being underground, because you live it 24/7 for years, you just get used to it, and the tension can be so exhausting that there's no point in being tense. You just I remember the very first time that scene in San Jose with me getting a haircut and so forth. At one point, a cop car drove down the street slowly. And I remember distinctly having the temptation, as you see in movies, people, they look behind them like that to see if that was my first training being underground, was I just kept walking as if nothing had happened, because I assume he may have been looking in his rearview mirror, and if I had turned around, that might have been the end of it right there.
Well, I have a question for all of you. I want to ask you, how is this is a wonderful biography that we just saw, but how relevant is this film today? How is it relevant?
Paul,
That's
take that.
for you,
Paul, yeah.
There's a prison movement now. There's a national prison movement. When this happened, this was the beginning of a prison movement. It was the beginning of an understanding of what was happening in the prisons, the racism, the oppression. But that was before Pelican Bay. It was before these maximum security torture prisons that we have in this country now. So all the issues of what's happening in the prisons, why there are so many American young people in prison, that's also relevant. And there's a whole lot more young lawyers and middle-aged and old lawyers involved now.
Some of them right here.
When this happened to Steve, there was a handful around the country. And that's why the attack at that point on lawyers was so important to the Nixon administration. So things have changed in many ways. The problems are still there.
Yeah, all you have to do is pick up the newspaper in the last day or so. I don't know if you've read, there's been a decision limiting solitary confinement. And the role of lawyers and activists in trying to improve prison conditions it's steadily grown. Angela Davis, who was briefly in the film, has been, an international leader in that struggle. But what happened to me, and then consequently, right 2 weeks later, Attica, when Nelson Rockefeller ordered his minions to kill 41 people inside Attica, that whole thing really dampened the prison struggle for quite a long time. But it's like Phoenix, however it is.
Rising from the ashes.
From the ashes, it's been a very strong movement over the last 2-3 decades.
Well, and I think I would say another couple of things to underscore is that, it was very important for us to contextualize Steve at the time. And those times are still with us, and it is still important for people to be making these commitments. So I think we're really hoping that the film, in its own way, will inspire. The idea is not to inspire people to have to go underground for the next 13 years. It's to inspire people to do the good work that is really needed at this time. And so our hope is that young people get to see this film and get to understand that Steve was part, as Karen Jo says, part of a movement that was way bigger than he was, and that with his acquittal, that movement, ended up with some more breathing room and some, having a better platform. So I think that's another piece of the work that this film can do out in the world. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think all of these are very, very important things that we hope people will take away from the film. But I think also I also see it as a human story. And there is a message here about resilience, about human resilience, and about the importance of supporting one another through, the toughest of times, right? Because shit happens. It's happened in my life also. It's happened in many of our lives. So, there's a part of it that's very political, obviously, and these are very dark times. They continue to be dark, and we have to continue the struggle. But we also have to support each other and find that strength, which I find so inspiring in Steve and people like him, to keep pushing forward for a better world. So I think, that is also the very human part of this story as well.
I want to just segue off of that, because there are a lot of people in this room who helped in different ways to keep me going underground, helped with the trial, came to court. In fact, it was frustrating to me working with Catherine, because there are all these people I wanted to make sure that they got in the film. And you can only do so much. But what I'd like is, because I know a number of you are here, all of the people that helped me in one way or another between August 21st, 1971 and
the day of your acquittal.
The day of the acquittal. Could you just stand?
Okay, stand.
If I could add just one line. The movie and Steve is an example of someone who's living their lives now consistent with their beliefs.
Well, I only have time for one more question, and I just want to know, what's your next project, Catherine?
I haven't really decided. I have a few ideas that are going around in my head, but I'd rather keep it confidential right now. But yes, I hope it doesn't take 7 years next time. That's all I can say.
Well, say what you're doing at UConn with your course. That's interesting.
Well, I teach human rights and film at the University of Connecticut, and it's been really, really rewarding also to be involved in that. And right now I'm teaching a course with the students working on the Bosnian genocide, working with the Bosnian community in Connecticut, and they're learning how to conduct oral history interviews, but also, the complexities of dealing with people who've been through major trauma and how to handle that. So it's part of a broader project of community-based oral history and digital archiving and storytelling that we're doing.
And, okay.
Abby, what's your next project, Abby?
So my next project just premiered this same week. And I want to encourage people to come see it. It's a film on diversity, the need for greater diversity in juries in Alameda County, because as somebody in the film says, these are trials in Oakland, and we have no black people in Oakland on juries. So my film addresses that, and it addresses the issues of what keeps black people from showing up for jury service. So it's related to like what it means to have a good jury in Steve's case and how hard it is today to actually get good juries. We're going to show it at the Grand Lake on October 25th, and I'll put out some flyers when this thing is over about it. So my next project's already done.
Wonderful.
Oh, and yeah, can I just say something about another screening for the Steve Bingham film? Oh, sorry, it's called Judging Juries. Sorry, Judging Juries. The Steve Bingham film will be shown, because we were told, both these screenings were sold out. We're going to show it again on December 6th at the New Parkway in Oakland. So if you have friends who you want to tell to come see this film, please tell them to join us at the New Parkway on December 6th, because that's the next time we'll be showing it, after next week here.
Well, there will be another screening at the festival.
Yes, but it's
and
sold
that's
out.
Sunday at October 15th at 11:30 a.m. So tell your friends.
Sold out
Yeah.
too.
Well, they all release
Miraculously,
tickets.
tickets show up at the
Yeah,
last
tickets
minute.
show up. So don't be shy about calling up and trying to get a ticket.
Okay?
Well, thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming. Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you, everybody.